Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning and welcome to the meeting of Highways and Transport Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Trevor Bridgewood, the Chairman of the committee, and sitting to my right is Vice Chairman, Councillor Paul Wimhurst. In addition to welcoming all members of the committee to this meeting, I would also like to welcome Councillor David East, Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport. Before we begin, there is a standard announcement. If we have a fire alarm, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors into reception and assemble in the car park at the front of the building and await further instructions. The audio-visual feed for this formal meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website, and all your comments will remain accessible online. Please have any mobiles, laptops and tablets on silent mode. The hearing loop is now activated. Requests to speak will be collated by the top table. Please indicate early when you wish to speak. We will now move on to the formal agenda.
Thank you, Chairman. We have no apologies for today's meeting. Thank you.
Declarations of members' interest. Do we have any members wishing to declare an interest? Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting of the Highways and Transport Scrutiny Committee held on the 16th of March 2026. This item is to approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting as a correct record. Please turn to pages 5 to 16 of the agenda pack. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Sheard, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Reeve, thank you. We will now vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you. Those minutes are agreed as a correct record. Item 4, minutes of the extraordinary meeting of the Highways and Transport Scrutiny Committee held on the 30th of March 2026. This item is to approve and sign the minutes of the extraordinary meeting as a correct record. Please turn to pages 17 to 22 of the agenda pack. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Sneath, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Reeve. We will now vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Those minutes are agreed as a correct record. Item 5, announcements by the Chairman, the Executive Councillors and Lead Officers. Myself, Netlham Road Roundabout Improvement Scheme. Please note that advice has been provided by officers that the Netlham Road Roundabout Improvement Scheme will now come to the committee at a later meeting date due to the submission of a refreshed key decision notice. This is due to the inclusion of an additional footway, cycleway bridge, which has introduced land acquisition and planning requirements that were not part of the original design. Progress has been dependent on resolving these matters, and the item is now programmed for the committee meeting on the 8th of June for pre-decision scrutiny. Please can members be reminded of our informal briefing on education transport following this formal committee meeting. The start time will depend on when we finish this meeting. However, we will allow a break in between the two. Thank you. Moving on. Any announcements from Councillor David East? No, thank you. Thank you. Now may move on to the next item. Item 6 is JCB Pothole Pro trial update. This item is found pages 23 to 30 of the agenda pack. The report provides an update on the JCB Pothole Pro trial, which details the value for money, operational effectiveness and outputs. The report will be introduced by Jonathan Evans, Head of Highways, Client, and Tom Gifford, Client and Contract Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and morning, members of the Scrutiny Committee. 8 months ago, the Highway Service commenced the second trial of the Pothole Pro. Since the trial commenced, I've included regular updates within the quarterly performance reports, quarters 1, 2 and 3, due to the level of interest within this trial. Today's paper runs through in more detail the performance and productivity of the trial and draws the trial to a conclusion. At that point, I'm going to hand over to Tom Gifford, the Client and Contract Manager, just to pick out some of the highlights of the report before we take questions. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Just a note at the start of this report is that what we're doing as part of this report is framing the operation of the Pothole Pro in Lincolnshire and how it's operating for Lincolnshire County Council, rather than reviewing the Pothole Pro as a machine or as a wider operation. So this is specifically within the context of how it's being used within Lincolnshire Highways. We've had a successful trial. It's operated very well. The level of planning that's required to go into making sure the machine works at its best, I hope, comes across through as part of the paper. Our provider, Balfour Beatty, have been happy with its operation, and it's shown to be a very effective delivery mechanism in comparison with the standard piece of kit that we've been using to deliver this piece of work. The machine provides good quality, and the health and safety benefits to the operatives have been significant, and not necessarily part of what's been measured as part of the trial, but have been demonstrable in the reduction of risk to staff. So I'll take the report as read, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'd like to invite members of the committee to speak on this item. Councillor Sneath.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I welcome this report, and it is a clear evidence-based approach taken to testing the Pothole Pro in live operational conditions. It is encouraging to see that the innovation being trialled properly and given proper trial with a focus on productivity, safety and value for money rather than just a novelty factor. The fact that the contractor has now chosen to retain the machine as part of its normal delivery suggests that the previous trial was inept. But following a more mature trial period, they are confident of its effectiveness, and I see that this is a positive example of allowing flexibility within the contract to deliver better outcomes for our residents. My question is, how will members be kept informed about how the ongoing performance and impact of this approach, including any lessons learned or adjustments, are being made over the time? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sneath. In terms of the updates, I'm happy to take or be steered by the Scrutiny Committee ultimately. Within the quarterly performance report, I'm normally updating on performance measures within the contract, budget pressures, and sometimes I'll do a paragraph or two in there about how it is as a service. What are the things that I think you need to be aware of? Happy to include it in there in the future, but I guess it's just to compare it against other bits of kit. We're using, tens, 20, 100 bits of kit across the service, but sometimes they're not always brought to the Scrutiny Committee. So it's just trying to gauge the level of update relative to the interest. So I'm happy to take that if that's of interest to the Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to come back then on that point, do we have any other new bits of exciting kit that we can trial, please?
As a service, yes, we're always trialling new innovative ways of delivering the service, always bettering in some way, whether that's a new product, a new treatment or a new material, or more and more, I think over this next phase will be data and AI, how we're using that and integrating it within the service. So maybe that's either through the quarterly performance paper or whether the Scrutiny Committee would like some sort of innovation paper bringing in the future. That might be something that could work, and happy to take a steer on that.
Wonderful, thank you. And yeah, I'd love to see what new technologies come out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Jonathan, happy to receive this agenda item, which I requested at previous meeting. The report clearly makes one point of who owns the machine, because there's a bit of, does the council own it or does the contractor owns it? Under summary, it states will remain Pothole Probe on contract. what exactly does on contract mean in real terms? Is it a case of we pay for it daily, weekly, monthly, rent it out from the contractors, or does the contractors actually say as a goodwill gesture, you know, you can use it? That's the first question.
Yeah, happy to take that one, Councillor Clark. In terms of the meaning of on contract within this report, was it staying within the Lincolnshire service, the highway service. There was nothing more meant to it than that. In terms of the commercial arrangements, I think it's sort of indicated within the report, but Balfour Beatty own this Pothole Pro equipment. It's held by their ATS, their fleet and transport arm. It's leased to the contract on a day works rate. So as you would lease any other bit of kit, that is leased to them on a day rate. It's just that the rates that we have for reactive patching allows Balfour Beatty to use any bit of equipment in any way they want within this contract, as long as we get that final outcome of the works being completed. So that's the commercial arrangement. Hence, the council isn't here saying this must be used. It's Balfour Beatty coming to that conclusion, and hence within the report we've also highlighted to the Scrutiny Committee that if Balfour Beatty find another bit of kit that does this better, they are willing and able to shift to that solution as well. Hopefully that cleared that one up.
Next question is, what are the most used terms in local authorities best value? Suppose the way to demonstrate this is to compare the output using the machine against previous outputs. So if the target is 60 square metres, if that is done on the previous method of, you know, relaying tarmac, etc., which would come out on best value?
From the trial that we've done to date, Balfour Beatty have concluded themselves, and obviously we're reporting here today, that the Pothole Pro for the work stream of reactive patching, which is that 3 metres squared up to 30 metres squared, they're deeming that as the best value to them. Within the report, I think we've indicated that the cost of the Pothole Pro is ever so slightly more per day, but the output and the productivity offsets that marginally. And I think we've estimated within the report that there's a 5% efficiency improvement from the Pothole Pro being on contract for this particular work stream.
But the outcome of the machine is nowhere near the capacity it can do, is it?
Yes, that's correct. So for plants of this equipment and type, within the report, you'll see that on a day on Bardney Causeway, it was able to reach something like 350 metres squared. Quite often, as a service, a highway service, we'll use alternative equipment, so like a planer, a mini paver and a planer. As the work size and meterage gets bigger, the sort of sweet spot for the Pothole Pro in Lincolnshire isn't individual potholes, and it's not surfacing of a large scale. We think it adds value in this spot of reactive patching. That's where we're seeing the value in terms of its productivity, its, as Tom just outlined, the safety measures and the speed to plane out a surface and sweep it at the same time. We're always held back by the reinstatement crew at this moment in time, so it's the same reinstatement crew that will be using either a Bobcat skid steer or alternative bits of kit. And probably as we move on now into operational delivery, we want to ever so slightly keep working on the solution that we've developed to get that productivity up even further. So some good examples within the report are running the crew twice a day. So the kit is currently shut down overnight. What we'd like to look at is double running it, so that we get that machine working twice as much through the day and making sure we get that productivity out. Whilst we're leasing the Pothole Pro on a day rate, we might as well make the best use of it. Hopefully that's answered that one, but if not, happy to take further questions.
Thank you. I think 64 square metres on average, and we're expecting that to carry on increasing as the crews get more efficient with it. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman. So I've just got a couple of observations I'd like to make. The first point is that I do find this a little bit disappointing that as our contractor, Balfour Beatty have not put this forward to us previously as an option. However, I also note that actually it's not our decision to make what equipment they use to fulfil their responsibilities. I think the fact that they've been able to shift and do this is great. I'd have liked to have seen a lot more detail in the report. I don't think there's much in there. There's no full cost comparison on this versus the traditional GAN method. I'd like to know if it does actually reduce backlog and whether we have any information as yet about the repeat defect rate. I appreciate it's early days in the trial, but if we're going into this, I think it would be useful to have those figures. I know that we don't usually discuss individual pieces of equipment as a scrutiny, and nor do I feel in any way qualified to say that this is the best piece of kit as opposed to anything else. But I think if we are going to discuss these items of equipment, we do need to have a fuller report giving their benefits and negatives. And I think that would have been sort of very, very useful to have today. But in particular, I'd like to know sort of in terms of productivity, whether we have the information on defect rates coming forward, and yeah, that would be the comparison versus traditional GANs, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon. In terms of the comment about Balfour Beatty not bringing to us before, within the paper we did outline that we've done this trial once before. So back in 2022, we did that on contract in Horncastle, where we looked at using the Pothole Pro, but we used it in a different way then. It was dedicated to individual potholes, so like a normal pothole gang. Since that date, and probably one of the reasons why the trial has been a success, is that we've introduced this reactive patching rate. So it allows us to do a cluster of potholes or a larger patch, and it's that sizing of 3 metres squared up to 30 metres squared. Prior to that, that opportunity in that middle zone didn't exist, so that's probably some of the reason why Balfour Beatty have brought it back to us. And we're also, as a contract team, when we look nationally, keeping update on other Pothole Pro trials. So it is getting picked up in other authorities more and more. And Balfour Beatty have continued to test it in other authorities with this same machine. So we've been getting regular updates, and apologies, it probably hasn't come through to the Scrutiny Committee on a regular basis since that date. But that's probably linked to the comment you made about we don't normally individually talk about an individual bit of kit. In terms of the actual content of the report, we try to be transparent as possible. We try to give as much information. I think Tom did share the utilisation data from our JCB telemetrics, and that's been shared to the Scrutiny Committee just to get that further insight of utilisation time and sort of idling and busyness time during the day. If there's any other bits of information that you think is missing in terms of the breakdown, happy to share that to the Scrutiny Committee. One comment I would make is that sometimes when we report on this information, the commercial aspects is challenging to publicly put out there. So in terms of the day rate or the cost that Balfour Beatty have tendered to us, we probably have to steer away from that unless we take it into a sort of a private scrutiny session. And within this paper, we thought, let's just share what we can and keep it open.
If I may just come back really briefly, I'm always keen to avoid going into exempt wherever possible, because I think it's important that the public have the right and should know what is being done. But it may be useful to have those figures provided in the future, perhaps not even as part of an exempt session, but perhaps in the papers so that we could view that in the future with the Chairman's approval. May I just also ask one further question? I note that the number of trained drivers for this at the moment, it doesn't strike me as a lot. In fact, it really doesn't strike me as a lot. And all you take is one sickness bug, and that's both of them off sick for a week. And if they're spending time together, I'd imagine that's not hugely unlikely. Are there further plans to train more drivers extensively, and also considering the fact that this may only be a shorter term solution, Balfour Beatty may come back to us next year and say that they don't want to continue with this for whatever reason. So are there sort of plans to consider that as well? Thank you.
Yeah, just to come back on the first point on the backlog, because the machine is delivering generally smaller patching rather than potholes, its impact on the backlog is important, and it is taking part, completing some potholes alongside its patching work. So it is part of reducing the backlog and getting to fix the backlog. So yes, we've got plenty of data on that. Just to pick up one point from John's first answer is a key part of running the Pothole Pro in the way that we are at the moment is how the budget's been allocated. One of the advantages of our previous arrangement was we could turn it off overnight and just not use it again. It was a subcontracted piece of equipment. Because this is part of Balfour Beatty's longer term commitment to us, it's much less easy just to switch off. And we have been able to plan the budget in a better way and have a more consistent budget and workload for it. So the contracting arrangement for Balfour Beatty has been important, just to be able to turn it on and off. What was that, sorry? Just to pick up on drivers, there definitely is a plan to increase the number of drivers moving forward. And now that Balfour Beatty are comfortable with the position of having the machine on the contract, there will be a training program to carry that through, because you're right, we're not in a resilient place at the moment, and the gangs have been very accommodating actually, and taken their leave together and things like that, so we've been able to coordinate when downtime has occurred. We've been able to manage that, but yeah, we'd definitely like to increase that, particularly to run a twilight or a night shift and double that up. Yeah.
Thank you. Just out of interest, how long does the training take?
So the training, I think, is a 5-day course at JCB at the moment. So those drivers have been away and spent that time doing it. But the familiarisation with the machine and their expertise on the machine is increasing all the time. So actually, they're getting better and better just with use of the machine, and familiarity is really important. So the training, the start of the training isn't particularly long or onerous, so that those future gangs will get into that, and but familiarity is the key. Yeah.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to start, if you just reference comments. I'm sure you didn't mean that, Councillor Sneath, but you referred to the previous trial as inept. I think we need to make sure that doesn't reflect on the fact that was conducted by officers of this council, and surely it doesn't mean that part of the trial was inept. I think it was a poor choice of word, maybe on reflection. But can I just say, Jonathan and Tom, this is a very carefully written report. It doesn't tell us quite a bit of what we want to know, as you just said about costings, because it's not usual for a report to come to scrutiny that would say things like it costs a bit more, or there's potential for this, potential for that. This is scrutiny, it's not guesswork. So the fact about going into closed session, I think, is an important one. If this is something of such importance that we need to work that out. I do wonder, if we have a contract with anybody, we expect them to deliver the best on the contract. So something doesn't quite stack up. That we ended a trial in 22, we bring it back now, they've chosen to keep the machine, it performs so much better, we're being told, yet at no point on the whole time I've been on this scrutiny, I've ever heard from the contractor constantly badgering us to want to bring this machine back into use because they can actually improve the output. Surely we should have been getting the best output from that contractor the whole time. Surely if they knew that this machine could be better utilised, that over those years we've been having a substandard service if all of a sudden it miraculously does better than we previously thought. And I know you're going to say it's being used a different way, but surely that's up to the contractor to work that out. It wouldn't normally be down to a local authority to insist on what type of machinery they use to give us optimum service. So I'm just wondering why there's been that time lapse between the original trial and then coming back on our request and suddenly saying it's a great piece of kit all along. That doesn't quite stack up, and I'm not stupid on this. I do have an engineering background, so I'm thinking I'd have been knocking on the door saying we can do better for you actually if you just give us another go. So that doesn't quite stack, so I'll be interested in knowing why that is. But there's a sentence at the bottom of page 27 that I'm really struggling to understand what it's meant to say. And it says, the operation of the machine has therefore not increased the costs of the service to LCC. However, the contracting flexibility of the supply chain provided alternative, I think there's something completely missing there, means that the delivery mechanism can be quickly amended should budgets change. So I'm guessing from that there is some guesswork with regards to if budgets change, is this still the optimum machine to use? So I'd like to know whether that's true or not. And the other thing is that obviously this is, in the report it says that Balfour Beatty, they decided to keep this machine on trial. Now normally under best value, we would go out to see which was the best piece of kit. So have Balfour Beatty done that? Because we certainly haven't. There are other machines out there that can do similar works or different works, work in different environments. Are we interested in trialling any of those to see if we get best value, or just taking the word of Balfour Beatty that this is the best value?
So I'll come back to that point about the line in, on page 27, which I think was just my previous point, that the contracting flexibility of being able to switch on or off the previous the previous equipment meant that as budgets were reached or workload dropped, we were able to simply not use the machine the following day. The longer term nature of this piece of equipment being owned by Balfour Beatty and being here in Lincolnshire means that it's a risk for Balfour Beatty to invest in a piece of equipment that isn't going to get full use. It's an expensive piece of kit. It does a good job. I don't think it's massively improving on where we were before. So we're talking about 60 to 64 metre average gain. It's not a step change in how the service is being delivered. It's a really good piece of kit that offers more flexibility and some really good alternatives. But you do have to invest to get there. So Balfour Beatty have done that and have bought the piece of equipment. So I think our previous contracting arrangement of just being able to turn it off as budgets change, we are in a slightly different position where we've got an increased settlement in budget. So our reactive maintenance funding has gone up. So the budget for this piece of equipment is there and is visible. So Balfour Beatty can see that there is a commitment to keep on delivering this piece of work. So that remains a viable and sensible option for delivery. Do you want to do the second?
Yeah, the only other point I'd pick up on was the best value of the contractor. Like I said in a previous question response, Balfour Beatty will always look for the best delivery mechanism. Within the contract, it's a target cost contract, and we have rates for certain bandings of work. It is up to Balfour Beatty to deliver how they best deliver that work. And I think with this trial, it's the shift from the original trial to a contract rate that now exists, reactive patching. That area of sort of middle ground of largish works existing get created an opportunity. I guess the point you're raising about since 2022 to 2026, could we have done something quicker? Through the time that we had the Pothole Pro trial, the vehicle has gone to other contracts, and we've been also monitoring other contracts. If it was a huge gain, if it was from a 60 metre squared up to 160, we'd have probably moved quicker. But I think the second trial just came at a time when the Pothole Pro was available to bring back to the contract, and there was appetite from this party to look at it, to push and innovate, and we've taken that challenge on as well with a 12-month trial as it started off, and with that budget element of the additional 1.5 million in our reactive service and the additional one-off budget of 4 million this year, it's given that surety to keep this on contract longer term. And as Tom said, if we didn't have that budget certainty, Balfour Beatty would probably be risk averse and will look to the supply chain to deliver it. So hopefully that's added that little bit extra.
Councillor Sneath.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for clarification, I do feel that the previous trial was clumsy or inept, same meaning. But Councillor Wright, I googled it, it said the same. But Councillor Wright, you did more eloquently put forward what I was referring to. And as officers have just explained, that we were, in 2022, we were on the first trials. Since that time, they have now looked at how they can perfect it. So it may have looked clumsy on the first trial, but as you've explained, it wasn't there previously, this idea of what they could do with it. So I think that with officers' explanation, I'll keep my word clumsy, but on the caveat that we did try something new, it didn't work, but since others have tried it, it has become successful. But I do thank Councillor Wright for saying it far more eloquently than myself. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Reeve.
Thank you, Chair. I went to the Pothole Pro demonstration out at Bullington last year, and one of the things that the contractors explained to me was the risk of personal injury to their staff. And perhaps because that's not as easy to quantify, it's not made a big issue of, but I think we ought to emphasise that more, that it's a lot better. You know, you've got guys bending over with still saws, jackhammers, digging up the road and that. It's very physical, and this takes away the majority of all that and makes life a lot easier and a lot safer for them, and we need to emphasise that a lot more. Not everything that we do can be quantified in terms of square meterage and pounds per square metre and that sort of thing, so I'd definitely encourage a bigger play to be put on that. The other side of it is one of the, I understand the failings for the original trial was the distance it had to travel daily to get to the work site. And I just wondered, are we now using LCC sites or district council secure storage areas overnight so that the minimum distance is travelled the following day, or does the machine usually end up going back to a central location for storage overnight? And perhaps as well, if local government review does take place, so we've got better access to the district council sites, such as the one out at Cambie Corner, those sort of things, will those be utilised more, or does it have to be a Balfour Beatty facility as opposed to a council facility? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeve. In terms of the health and safety comment, yeah, absolutely. I don't think it has been stressed probably within this, because I think we were looking for the commercial value for money element, but in terms of health and safety, it does get a mention. It's as much to do with, as you say, sort of the physical elements of breaking out asphalt and putting it onto a wagon, whereas this machine will do it in one. It also helps us with road space ultimately, putting somebody in that road next to live traffic. It's just mitigating one more element, so that's really important to us. In terms of the original trial, I think the big shift with that original trial was that it was featuring or doing the normal pothole delivery response. So just by making that switch to reactive patching, it means that its capacity and its need to drive further is reduced instantly. With the original trial, just because you're going out to sometimes a metre square or a 0.5 metre square at a location, you will be tracking that machine further. In terms of opportunities to store the vehicle, it's stored at our 5 depots at the moment, but I know Balfour Beatty have secured it at private places, and they do not need to store it at a depot. It's probably just an arranged start place for the driver and the crew to commence the day. And I think LGR, however that progresses, will give us further opportunities for us to look at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Reading the report, once the machine is on site, what is the distance it can travel without being put back on the low loader? I mean, is it all worked out that, you know, it can go to a site and move freely from one area to another?
Yeah, there is no sort of guideline to that really. It comes down to the amount of time that it's going to spend travelling to the next site. So if the next site's in a local, relatively close, it's a real benefit. So the key to making the most of this machine in our operation is to program the work effectively. So a good view ahead of the basket of work that's required for the day, for the week, for the month, is really, really important to making this machine work at its best. And actually its ability to travel itself over a distance is further than the comparative use of a skid steer. So if we were using a skid steer, we'd be putting them on low loaders and moving them. So it makes them faster to get around, but it also means that you've got an added cost in there. So there's a delicate balance between how the movement operates and how the program ties with that. So program's the key, but its ability to self-propel is a real benefit. So it can get further than a skid steer can, but by the same token, you don't want to spend operator time travelling too far. So there's a real delicate balance in that operationally.
Right, it's been discussed today that the machine has been on trial before. I take it officers were involved in that trial. I understand other companies have similar machines, and well, simple question is this the decision to use JCB, was it a political decision, or was it one done on, you know, what the machine can actually do?
Thank you, Councillor Clark. In terms of officers' involvement in the initial trial, yes, that was us, the same team. So there is consistency in the two trials. I think that the difference is probably the longevity of the second trial as opposed to the first one. So I think one of the big differences is probably we never really got over that driver experience. We had it on contract for a month in the initial trial, and it linked to that sort of dispersed in smaller potholes. It probably wasn't going to give it the opportunity that it needed, and the driver, you know, confidence and ability to operate the machine has just increased over time within this trial. So that's what we've seen to date. In terms of other machines, Balfour Beatty will be testing and using nationally, looking at other contracts to see what is the best bit of kit all the time. In terms of this trial, it was initiated sort of from a political request to look at an alternative solution. So I'm not going to hide away from that, but the decision is solely Balfour Beatty's. It's their decision to work within a cost envelope and pick the best bit of kit. And that's what's happened in this instance. So this isn't a decision for the Scrutiny Committee. It's just an open paper on the trial and where we've got to.
And perhaps just further to that, because this machine is already owned by Balfour Beatty, it actually comes at a very reasonable rate. So we are aware of some of those other pieces of kit. They would need purchase and all those sort of considerations to be made by Balfour Beatty. But they've had this machine for quite some time. It's worked around the country, so it actually becoming available and now us being able to use it on contract is where the benefit really fits in.
Thank you. Councillor Sheard.
Thank you, Chair. So my question has sort of been eaten up with some of the conversation that's been going on here. I have to say I do welcome the report today, and I do welcome the fact that from your answers that the programme is going to be looked at for its effectiveness for working within local areas without time wastage and taxpayers' money wastage travelling to and from areas before they actually complete full works in that area. Do we know the communication between Balfour Beatty and ourselves, is that quite rigid so that we can ensure that we are actually getting best effective usage of the machine in an area once it's there?
Thank you, Councillor Sheard. In terms of the team, whilst Balfour Beatty are the contractor, I would consider them part of the highway service, so we are one team in terms of our delivery. Communication is excellent between the two parties. Probably something that we need to work on a little bit more is, we did it for the initial part of the trial, was telling members and the public where the vehicle's going to be. Maybe we bring that back if that's of value. We have that information, as Tom said. We've got the programme of works because we're really interested in making this as efficient as possible. So we know where the vehicle's going for the next week or next two. So maybe there's some more comms in there that we can say proactively, this will be in your area, this will be in your patch. But in terms of comms, yeah, there's no issues at all with Balfour Beatty.
Councillor Christopher.
Thank you, Chair. Could someone tell me how many metres squared of repairs it's done in total up until the date this report was put out?
Yeah, we can come back to you with that. It's not a problem.
Okay, because I'm sort of looking at the figures here, and I'm sort of thinking, well, so 60 metres a day. Is this based on the run time, so the actual physical time of it travelling and running? Is that how we're calculating that that daily calculation, or is this based on the number of days, or is it just weekdays?
The 60 metres a day measure,
or 64 or whatever.
is that what the question was?
Yeah. So since September, we've had 170 weekdays since then. So multiplying that by 64, you're getting 10,880 metres squared. Is that what we're saying that it's done, or are we saying that for the time that it was working and travelling, and actually the answer is 440 metres that it's done since September?
Sorry, no. So that's an actual physical measure on the ground of the work completed. So that measurement of output is based on the measurement of the defect that's been completed.
Right. So ultimately then, so it's not accounting for the time that it's not actually working. Interesting. Do you understand?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the commercials of the higher rate for the day, that's something that Balfour Beatty will be doing with every bit of kit, whether it's a Bobcat skid steer or a Pothole Pro. They are procuring, whether they own it or whether they lease it, that bit of kit, and its delivery then through the day is that measurement of value for money. What we're looking at is or what we've communicated in this document is the 64 metres squared, which is the physical patch size average per day. Within the report, there's days when sometimes the Pothole Pro hasn't been active, so it's not been active 5 days a week, but I'd be pretty certain it's 4.5. It's just that we had a couple of weeks of downtime prior to Christmas. That was in my quarterly performance report where I said it was having a height restrictor included, and the drivers had taken leave at that time together. So we can share that more detail if you need it in terms of the actual total meterage, but I don't think it'll be a calculation of the number of working days from the start of the trial times 64. It'll be a little bit more complex.
Okay, thank you. So, because obviously, reading these reports, my role is to read these as if I'm a member of the public and whatever else, and what it sounds like is that this machine's able to do 64 metres a day. So you start multiplying that by 170 if it is just weekdays, or if it's 7-day weeks that these guys are working, then actually that's a considerable amount. And actually it's nowhere near that amount from what you're telling me there. It's far less. So I just find that the way that the report's been written, it's not entirely clear that that's the case, if that makes sense. So.
No, just to be clear, I think it's of the 64 metres squared average per day, I'd say this vehicle has been doing typically 6 days a week, so it's Monday to Friday and a Saturday. So I think it is very close to the 64 times by the number of working days opportunity. But what I didn't want to say was it's not done 100% of those working days. So in December there was 2 weeks downtime, but we can get you that total figure. I do think the trial has been really thorough and has been tested its capability and productivity really well. And we've taken that opportunity to work weekends, obviously, to catch up with the pressure that we've got with the backlog.
Yeah, that's great. And just one more thing as well, Chair, if that's okay. Just so, obviously, and what's come out of this is that actually it's very good when we're dealing with these drought-damaged areas and whatever else, and that's actually an area, it sounds like actually without this trial, then that wouldn't have been picked up. So I think that's to be commended, personally. What I would say is that, of course, a lot of the time with these sorts of contracts, I'm trying to think of our party group and all the nightmares we have with contracts on printing and these expensive printer systems where the small print it's all in the detail. We're not going to have drought damage every year, I hope, and certainly not to the extent that we saw it last year. And I guess at the moment it looks very efficient, but I think we're all aware that actually we've had a pretty severe impact on the roads over the last sort of 12 months, and we've been playing catch up on that. So is there a risk with us sort of committing to this? I think we have a profit share on this as well to some extent. So if there are losses for Balfour Beatty, am I right? This, again, we can't talk about commercially sensitive stuff, but I understand there is some level of risk to us on that. So say, for example, suddenly we get on top of all these drought repairs, we have 3 really, really consistent years where there's no damage whatsoever. Is this machine suddenly going to become less efficient than the current systems? And are we protected against that financially? Or we're not going to be ending up with an albatross round our neck that's really expensive, that isn't actually able to run as efficiently as the other methods?
Thank you, Councillor Christopher. In terms of the, you're right to say the drought damage element of this trial was really successful. A longitudinal crack was excellent for a pothole pro just to drive down, and on that day, we were doing significant output up to the 300 metres squared. I can reassure you that there's always enough work in highways to do potholing or repairs at this moment in time. In terms of our strategy, we think there's probably 10 to 15 years worth of improvements that we can make on the highway. So I don't think there's a risk in terms of the council. And in terms of the way that it's procured through Balfour Beatty, this vehicle can be switched off very quickly if we need to, because it's a lease arrangement within the wider Balfour Beatty business. So equally, we're not exposed to any risk, but I can't see at this moment in time the Pothole Pro going, because there is enough work and there's enough budget to do that work. It'll just be looking at patching, haunching. There's a variety of different mechanisms that we can use it on contract. What we haven't done yet, and the report sort of suggests that we may do, is look at sort of grip cutting, other aspects of the multi-tool aspect of the Pothole Pro. But equally, we've got enough work for what it is meant to do, potholing or patching. So I think we're okay.
That's great, thank you, Jonathan. Do we know whether it can pollard trees?
It can do, well, maybe not pollarding, but it can do attachments that does hedge cutting and flail cutting, so they can be added. It's just, as we've sort of indicated within the report, that's probably not an area that we think it'll add value, because we have dedicated contractors that have tractors with flails attachments on them. So it's unlikely to go down that route, but it could do if we wanted to make it multi-purpose. Where it has been useful is in some smaller unitary councils where they have one bit of kit and it's sort of multifaceted and it's doing a variety of different work streams. It's just in Lincolnshire, because we're so large and we have large programs of work with big budgets, we normally have a dedicated bit of kit to do that treatment type. But that option's there if we need it.
Councillor Vernon.
Thank you very much. Can we go back a little bit to what we've already been discussing? I just would like to understand how much it is costing us to transport the Pothole Pro around, to be honest, because I think that's quite important. It's something that I don't think we're factoring into our conversation when we're considering the efficiencies of it. I'm also really concerned that we do appear to be losing some flexibility here. You've mentioned that the programme of works needs to be put together in advance, quite significantly in advance, to make the best use of the Pothole Pro. And it seems really that the Pothole Pro is not very good at potholes, but is in fact better for patching work. So I'd welcome some comments on that, including the sort of additional costs of the load loader and the moving machines and how that's being budgeted for. Thank you.
Yeah, we can come back on the cost for low loader, but actually we've not had to move it around as much as we might a skid steer. So it's actually been less on low loader cost than we would have spent on the equivalent. But that is part of our consideration in the overall cost of the machine. Yeah. Sorry, what was the second point?
Yeah, and on the other element, in terms of the programme or efficiency of the reactive patching, whether that was done through the supply chain or through Balfour Beatty Direct, we do the same approach. So we'd still be wanting that works basket ahead of ourselves and making sure that we get it right. I guess just being completely open, I think sometimes when it's the supply chain and it's a step further away, sometimes that care and effort into the rate and that making it work isn't as good as it should be. So that's something that we probably need to take away as a team and make sure that we are making sure that every bit of work we deliver as for the highway service is as efficient as possible. Sometimes when a supply chain delivery partner is 2 steps away and they're just doing it for a rate, the efficiency or the need to make it better isn't as clear or obvious. So that's something that, well, or reflecting on there, that we can take away as something to look at for our other work streams to make sure we get it as right as possible. But ultimately, the work basket's the same.
Chairman, if I may be really cheeky and just ask one final question. I know that in the report you mentioned Balfour Beatty were looking to sell this just last April. So what has changed in that year that now makes this sort of so key when, from what we've discussed this morning, I can't really see too many benefits myself. Thank you. Yeah,
I think our demonstration of I think we'd all probably agree with you that for Lincolnshire, patching is the right point for this machine, not potholing. Just with our geography and the way that we're spread, that definitely feels like the right place. It's been trialled on a number of contracts going around, and I think our demonstration of how best to make use of it has meant that Balfour Beatty are keen to keep the machine. But up until then, I think that a number of trials focusing on potholes haven't necessarily gone so well. So it's been part of the Balfour Beatty fleet for a number of years, and hasn't got a massive number of hours on it. The machine hasn't been used massively. So yeah, it feels like it's the right place for us.
Thank you. I think the conclusion from that is it should be named the Patchwork Pro, not the Pothole Pro. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I think we had some really good, interesting, in-depth questions there. It's very good. So as there's no more questions, I propose that we have reviewed and satisfied with the detailed performance contained in the report, and that officers be thanked for their presentation. Can you please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you, that's agreed. Moving on to item 7, Highways Drainage Works Programme 2026-27. This item is found on pages 31 to 34 of the agenda pack. This report is on the reactive, cyclic and planned aspects of the highways drainage maintenance. The report will be introduced by Nathan Whitfield, Principal Engineer Drainage. Thank you, Nathan.
So I'll start again. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. The report I provided is our strategy for this financial year, and remembering that highway drainage is a broad discipline with many teams undertaking activities ranging from reactive maintenance to major drainage renewals. With the additional investment this year, we are enhancing our cleaning regimes and undertaking more improvements on our highway drainage systems. So on that note, our programmes for minor and major drainage streams will be available shortly. We are in the process of enhancing and merging various data sets into one source and improving the visibility of them along with their progress. Having said that, the nature of the work that we do can be impacted upon by weather events or by sudden or catastrophic incidents, and programmes often do need to reshuffle. It's always worth a reminder that alongside and under the public highway are drainage assets managed and or maintained by other risk management authorities, such as water companies, the Environment Agency, internal drainage boards and national highways, and that we often work together in partnership to fix and mitigate issues and actively support the local drainage groups and the joint Lincolnshire Flood Risk Partnership. And just to summarise, running side along all this, we are continuing to enhance the data we collect about our drainage assets, but significant improvement has been made through our legacy data capture that has also run over the last several years. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. On drainage, I have many calls about drainage, about surface water flooding. Always the same thing, you know, the council get the blame for it because the gully ain't been cleaned out, when in fact it might not be the gully, it might be further down the pipes, blocks and all that. The responsibility, therefore, could lie with one of the partners, Anglia Water Board, Environment Agency, etc. In the past, the county have produced plans of where our pipes go to and all that, but then there seems to be a mystery of where they go after that because no one knows. What I'm saying is, I understand the council's doing a plan of our assets, but that's no good for when you tell the resident that, oh, the gully outside your house, that's all right, we don't know where the pipe goes, sorry, your house has got flooded. This has happened time and time again. Let's see where we can use it. So could we actually work, I know you say we work together, but I'm sorry, I'm not seeing a lot of evidence of that. especially down St Catherine's, Mayfair, Westbrook. These have been going on for not the odd month. They've been going on for 2 years now, and we don't seem to be moving forward. I appreciate the fact the drainage team has been out, but we don't move forward apart from, from where we get to when we say, no, our responsibility ends there. We'll have talks with Anglia Water Board, whatever, but nothing ever, comes of it. Whilst here, I feel I must express my concern about street closing, for gully cleansing. Church Drive, Booton Park Road, and this has not just happened once, not twice, 3 times. It's been closed for gully cleansing. The first time, nothing happened. The second time, they put a sign at the top of the street to say, can you not park over gullies? Then the van stopped at the top of the street and said, well, I'm sorry, mate, I can't get down there because of parked cars. But that isn't what they asked. The third time, I'm not even sure what happened. It was a mixed up of dates. So it does seem we're not actually getting anywhere with these. Could you sort of like explain why we're not? And could you actually use your influence on our partners, work together with them and solve the issues that, I mentioned today, please? Thank you.
With respect to the first question, we do actively work with all our partners. We regularly meet up, typically on a kind of bi-monthly or quarterly basis, so we do share common issues. With respect to St Catherine's, I had some communications from Anglian Water last week. They are going back to have a look in May. The reason for that is they've been waiting for the river levels to drop so that they can adequately and safely get to the outfalls, because obviously it discharges into a main river, and we will give an update on that once they've been down there and done their element. With regards to Westbrook Road, that is a fairly recent one to me. Again, it's with Anglian Water. We've asked them to undertake an inspection, and I'm just waiting to hear the outcome from that. And I think, Sean, you could answer the second question.
Which was?
The gullies.
In terms of?
The road closures.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, in terms of road closure, I think we can admit that over a number of years, we've not always got the best output in terms of our gully cleansing, particularly with parked cars. So we've started now a better communication programme in terms of closing roads, doing the advance notification, putting the signs out and spending a bit more time removing those vehicles. And we have the option as part of our programme going forward to do towaways where this causes a problem. Not something we want to do that through communication, but we've got funds where we will target certain areas where we've got flooding issues as a start with, then broaden that programme out across the county where we will hopefully get the 100% of gullies cleansed rather than leaving the 5% year after year that don't get cleansed because of parked cars.
Yeah, I understand that, I appreciate that, but what I'm saying is when you tell residents to remove the cars, which they do, and nothing happens, then you tell them again to remove the cars and nothing happens, the confidence when they get that letter through the door to say, can you remove your car, they're going to think, well, that's going to happen, so I'm not going to remove it.
Yeah, apologies if that has happened. I'm not aware of that situation. I can look into that for you and get back to you on it. But what I will say, like all drainage activities, there are times where we'd like to do things, but if we have emergencies, crews might be diverted to something that's actually flooding rather than the planned works that we'd like to do. Nothing we want to be doing, but I think on this contract this year, we've increased our amount of jetters on the contract, so we've got more coming in. So hopefully that will give us better flexibility when we have these issues in the future. And I take your point, yeah, I wouldn't want works cancelled like that, because it takes a lot of work to move vehicles. But apologies to that.
Thank you. Councillor Reeve.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to say I welcome the fact that an extra 925,000 has been allocated towards minor drainage improvements. That's a positive step forward. Councillor Clark rightly mentioned about possible issues with our drainage partners, but I have a serious problem when I'm told quite frequently, oh, we can't do nothing about that, it's riparian ownership of the drains, and it just seems to stop dead there. What enforcement does Lincolnshire County Council have over private drainage, where the public drains drain into private drainage, and is it something that we're prepared to use? Thank you.
Just with regards to enforcement, that is kind of the last step we would like to take. If there's a major impact on the highway, we generally follow an educate and negotiate process first. That usually bears good results. It's fair to say that the responsibilities around riparian ownership is kind of quite muddled and confused, and people don't realise that they've got drainage assets going around or through their property that may impact on the highway. Enforcement is a quite time-consuming, quite lengthy process to go through. And nationally, it doesn't always bear the fruit that people think it will, unfortunately. Hence, we do take that educate and enforce. Educate and negotiate. If we do have to enforce, we have a memorandum of understanding with our IDB partners. They have extended districts, and they have got the enforcement specialists that can carry through that if it needs to be done.
I have to come back outside. You said about flooding on highways, if people's homes are getting flooded or on the verge of getting flooded, does that add extra weight to the argument?
If it's coming off the highway, then obviously we would work with our floods and water team in conjunction with that. If it is generally if it's a general flood related issue as it's coming off fields or surrounding area, that would sit with our floods and water team, that responsibility. But again, we do work very closely with our floods and water team, and we often do share that workload.
Thank you.
Councillor Sneath.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's fair to say that drainage remains one of the most sensitive and visible issues for residents. So I do welcome a clear structure set out in the programme, and the additional funding, as mentioned by Councillor Reeve, that has been secured is very welcome. It is positive to see a balance between reactive response, cyclic maintenance and planned schemes, as well as recognition of the challenges posed by changing climate and third-party responsibilities. This feels like a practical and it does feel like a very practical approach to the complex area of our network. How are flooding hotspots being prioritised and reviewed, particularly where there's been a history of repeat incidents, as pointed out by other members? Thank you.
I think the first thing is when a flooding incident occurs, a Section 19 report is undertaken as part of the Floods and Water Management Act. We as Highways are recipient of one of those reports. They are currently produced for our floods and water team independently. We will look at what needs the work that needs to be done on that and allocate it to the appropriate team to do that. But we would also base that on the level of work that needs to be done. So let's, for example, if it's just clearly a jetting problem, we would send the jetter out there, they'll clear the blockage. If it needs more major interventions, we then put that into, we have a process for prioritising schemes, and I'm sure you appreciate we get many requests to upgrade or repair, and one of the top factors that will move a scheme through that process is internal flooding.
Yeah, just to add into that. So we've been collecting quite a bit of data on our gully cleansing for a number of years now, one of which highlights the amount of detritus or how full each of the gullies are. So we've been utilising that to identify some of our hotspot areas. So rather than going back year after year and or every 6 months sometimes and cleaning it again, we're going to target some of those areas and not just do the gully cleansing, but do the pipe system cleansing to outfall. So hopefully that will mediate some of those issues. So I think we've got £800,000 in the current budget set aside for those hotspots. So there'll be some of that work done as well as doing some of the repairs in those areas. So a two-pronged approach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's like you read my mind, because my next question was going to be is to make sure that we actually do lasting improvements rather than just short term. But thank you very much. You've answered my follow-up question. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I ask, on the riparian waterways, is there any comprehensive mapping, and do we have access to that?
In terms of riparian, you can split it kind of into two categories. There's the open water courses, the ditches alongside the highway, and then there are often water courses that have been culverted. So obviously I think we can all see the open water courses quite clearly. It's the ones that lay beneath the highway or adjacent to it or alongside it that are not what I would term uncharted. We don't know exactly where they are. We often find them through investigations or other partners find, and that's when we start talking about it. And it's fair to say a lot of these assets are not a highway asset. There's quite a defined term for what is a highway drainage asset, and that is primarily that it serves the highway. We are getting some clarity on this, and we're trying to produce some guidance, because to be honest, it is a very confusing area. I think the law, it's been developed over so many centuries, that takes an awful lot of unpicking, and we just want to make sure that we are clearing exactly what assets we are maintaining, which is the highway assets, and where we need other parties to come in and do their part.
Thank you. So we are actually developing that, and we'll hopefully get a more comprehensive view of the overall issues. Thank you. Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your report, very interesting. I'd like to start by saying that I do share Councillor Clark's concerns about the the last-minute change in planned works. And I think that actually we, as councillors and as the council, should be doing a lot more with this. Would it be possible to make us aware if works are cancelled at short notice so that we can at least try and access local residents, local parish council groups, etc.? Because one of the biggest frustrations we've had, and I've had this in my division as well, I'm always loath to go into division-specific detail at Scrutiny because I'm here to talk about the general overview. But in this instance, I think if we can actually pop a method in place which would let councillors know that work has been cancelled for that particular day, been moved to a particular day, I think that would actually solve a lot of the issues that we face with parked vehicles and where a cleanse is tricky to manage. Because, as I say, we've had it before, somebody doesn't turn up, all the cars are put back, then the street's blocked, you're there a couple of days later, and it's a problem, understandably. So that's my first point. The second point I'd like to make is that for the second time today, I really don't feel there's enough detail in this report. It's a very, very light report, and I think that we could have really benefited from seeing considerably more detail on individual schemes, details on what's planned for the additional funding, where the drainage work is, the drainage assets. So I'm a little bit disappointed with that. Having said that, I must obviously say that I'm absolutely thrilled to see that the slip road on the A1 at Woolsthorpe, which is absolutely in my patch and very much awaited, is in the list for the sort of high-risk locations. No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. Has it? It's in process, but it's not been done, has it? Just checking. Sorry, he told me that it had been done. But yes, yeah, there has been some temporary work carried out to ensure residents are able to access, but no, that will be massively beneficial to those, so thank you. With that, though, that does bring me on a bit further here. Can we have a definition of the risk-based approach in future, or indeed now? Because I don't feel that there are any details of the risk versus spend scenario. And I also think that we're being asked to comment on collaborative working across directorates and with partners. It would have been quite useful to have some further information on that if you would be able to provide. Thank you. Thank you very much. But no, I'm very grateful for the Woolsthorpe work, which has not yet been done. Thank you.
No, hasn't been completed yet. Just on the first point, and I agree with you actually. We do need to give more visibility in terms of what we're doing and what changes. We're developing that councillor portal, and maybe one of the things we can look there about how we notify you of what's changed, not just on this work stream, but across all work streams.
Chairman, if I may just come in really quickly there, I accept some members have their phones on their emails, but even if it was possible to send a text message out, we can then feed that back through parish and town councils or even to local residents groups in a street where work has been changed, because this is all about communication and it's our role to help you to communicate with residents. So the more that we can do to assist would be great.
Yeah, absolutely agree, and I think it helps us all, most definitely. So we can look at how that might be facilitated. So I'll talk to this way. In terms of the future, I don't know what the second question was. Yeah, I think I've answered that one. third one, you take that one.
With regards to the risk-based approach, with regards to gully cleansing, several factors looked at. Obviously, when they cleanse, they take the silt depth, as already mentioned. They will look at kind of, is the street tree lined? Obviously, you get more leaf litter. And I'm trying to think of all the other aspects. I think we have come to Scrutiny before and discussed it. I'm sure we could find that on all the factors. I'm not directly involved in the gully cleansing. It's done by a different team, but we can certainly provide you with a detailed response on how we do that. With regards to the minor schemes and the major schemes, we look at obviously flood risk, like we just discussed, properties. If it's an impact on the highway, we look at visibility to that obstruction. So if it's on a high-speed road, that gets a high rating. I think we've got about 15 to 16 different factors that we use to prioritise the scheme. Again, we can give more detail on that at a later date.
Thank you, that would be really useful, but I would also like to say it probably would have been quite useful to have it as part of this report today as well. So perhaps moving forward we could have a little bit more detail in the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I concur. That was something I raised when I saw the report myself, but I spoke to Nathan and he's brought along a lot more information with him, I believe. So if you've got any further questions, don't hesitate. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't to labour the point, but I did think today was a competition to see who could write the shortest report for scrutiny. So when you used to a bit more detail normally. I would like to publicly thank all the drain teams that have been carrying out work, because my village has been flooded twice in recent years, and there's been extra work that's gone on to actually make sure the whole system's been cleansed. It doesn't stop flooding, but it does give a little bit of capacity for that very short, brief space of time when we're trying to get the water away. So that's been very, very welcomed. But I did notice, as I've been going about, and because I noticed there's money in there for jammed ironworks, I've been seeing failures on drain pots, the gully pots, the grid work. There's been some, the winter has really taken away the edges, a real deep sort of, it don't class as a full pothole, but it's actually surrounding the ironworks. I've noticed, I've probably picked up on 6 or 7. Now, if I'd seen 1, that would be just a failure. But once you start to get past 3 and 4 and 5, then there's something that's not going right with the contractor with sealing the new ironworks into place. And it leaves quite a deep surround. And of course, where's that then going? Straight back down the gully pots that are being cleansed and now sat in the system. So I did wonder if that's been picked up and whether there's any extra inspections going on.
Yeah, so they will be picked up as part of inspections. And I think we recognise that historically it's always been an issue about reinstatements around gullies or ironwork particular. We've got different methods again, looking at our innovation portfolio, where there's different treatments that we're starting to use that hopefully give us a bit more longevity in those types of works. But it is a difficulty and the teams are picking it up. And as part of that programme with the jam lids, they are looking at defects around those gullies as well, so they won't be ignoring them. And just to confirm, I remember now what the second question was from Councillor Vernon. It was around the detail. I think we tried to strike the balance about how much detail we put in and how much we leave out to questions. So recognising probably in future there does need to be a little bit more detail in the report when we bring it again.
Chairman, I think that would be much appreciated. I think there is a sort of, I completely appreciate the need for us not to be sort of seeing 30,000 pages, but I do think we'd need more detail than we've got on both items today, actually. Thank you.
Councillor Sheard.
Thank you. Councillor Vernon has literally stolen my thunder. It's about communication. And one thing that is constantly being reported to myself is after strongly encouraging people to report on Fix My Street, they're getting messages back saying that people have been out and investigated despite them sending photos. And a lot of residents have been on the verge of water coming into their properties, so they've been in some really quite scary situations. But then by the time it is investigated, they get a message back to say, no, sorry, this isn't a priority. I just wonder whether perhaps that message needs re-looking at, because I don't feel it's actually giving out a correct message to them. It's actually making them feel a little bit ignored. And also I am wondering, when you're looking at your future schemes where it says investigation, feasibility and design, perhaps you need to go back to Fix My Street and see how many people are actually sending you photos around issues and perhaps taking them into account, because the voices of our residents do highlight issues to us that are ongoing in their lives, and perhaps they need listening to a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with your last point there, that we do need to use that information And one of the things that we have been able to do as part of this extra budget is put more resources into that investigation of those complaints that residents are putting in. And also the comments, we are reviewing those. We continue to review those to make sure that they're understood for all types of customers, because sometimes the complaint doesn't match always that the issue that you've got. So plain English, I think, is what we're looking at and trying to change. But we'll take those comments on board because some good suggestions there.
Councillor Christopher.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting. You mentioned there, Sean, about the leaf fall at certain times of year and other issues that come up. And of course, sitting on district, I'm aware that certainly here in Lincoln, it's one sweep a year generally, which is inadequate. And I'm sort of thinking back to the last meeting, or the one before it actually, where we had the strategy come forward, and that the arbour budgets are not enough really to keep on top. So I wonder, now that that sits within highways in a slightly different way, is that going to help to work more closely with the arbour teams to sort of, I suppose, highlight areas where pollarding hasn't been done for 15 to 20 odd years, and actually that's increasing the amount of leaf fall in those areas? If you're seeing it in your data that you're having to cleanse those gullies more, is that how this is going to start working moving forward? From a strategy perspective, are we going to start looking at the data from that team and crossing over, or do we already? And also, I'm quite fortunate. I think St Giles, when I go onto my highways data, or my flood data on my little councillor divisional bit on the BI data, it basically says I've never had any flooding in my division. But of course, for the city, I sit on Monks Road, and Monks Road and Stamp End in particular has had an incredible amount of flooding. And one thing I will note with Monks Road in particular, a lot of the ironworks, when you actually look down in them, they're blocked with silt and leaf fall. And I know that it's very difficult to sweep those streets because you've got cars lining both sides in most cases. Very hard to keep on top of it. There's a lot of trees from the Arboretum and around that area as well. But equally, the road itself is very, very old, and I can't see anything about major developments as to when that's likely to change. It's still a very, very much in the distant future. But I would imagine the number of times that they've been blocked up and the level of silt in them, I can't help but wonder, maybe it's actually the structure that's underground, the actual piping structure that needs to be replaced at some point. And at what stage does the cost of doing this maintenance actually spill over into a major sort of repair instead? And how are you working with those other teams is something I'd be more intrigued to learn more about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Christopher. Just because it relates to the strategy, and that was the sort of conversation that we had a month or so ago now. In terms of the points you make about the pollarding being more planned and less reactive for trees, that's a strategy that we'd like to adopt or are adopting for the next 3 years. You're right to say that it does link heavily to our gully cleanse cycle. As Sean and Nathan outlined, the current high amp that we've got outlines our response to gully cleansing 2 year, 1 year and 6 monthly, depending on the risk-based. As part of that, we're taking into account inquiries that we've had historically, Section 19's leaf litter and silt data. So anything that we can correlate of, we're going back and back and back to these locations that have leaf litter. Whether that will be solved through planned arboriculture work, I don't know, because there is always going to be leaves in those heavily tree-lined streets, but managing it by, pollarding, reducing the crown height, or the leaf mass at that location is going to help us. I think at the previous conversation we had that discussion about whether the districts can time it differently, and whether we can time our cleanse differently. I think there's opportunities in LGR when we go down that route to align those two things, because we're, as you say, sometimes a district may only cleanse street sweepings once per annum, but if you don't get it spot on, that leaf litter isn't going to be all collected, and it is ultimately going to go down the gully pot, and then it's on a frequency in our world of about, we're probably doing 100,000 assets per year, and we're trying to steady the resource over the whole year. So we're unlikely to just throw, or do a month's worth of gully pots at the time when it's the worst. Ideally, that would be our solution, but we can't do that because of the resource levels that we have to keep on contract in sort of a steady, efficient way of doing the work. So, yeah, really good points, and the ones that we will take away and always do try to improve. But for the Monks Road and Stamp End, probably best handing over to Nathan or Sean.
Yeah, I think what I'll do more generally to add to what Jonathan's had, for Monks Road, most definitely, I think we recognise that's a low-lying area with the leaf and old network. We can spend all of our money cleaning those gullies, I've said previously, forever, but improving the capacity of the pipes is the way that we're moving that forward. And as we see now, we're starting to get money into that area of work, so they will come up for our priorities as we sort of go through all of that budget spend over the next few years, hopefully.
I look forward to seeing that appear, as will many residents, I'm sure. So yeah,
And like everything, limited the budgets that we've had, but yeah, we are starting now to, and Nathan and his teams as well doing a data collection, so we're not just focusing on the gullies we've got, we're starting to map our systems, understand where the outfalls are, and from that identify where our issues are.
That's great, thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Previous councillor talks about Fix My Street. Totally agree, because residents say they ring up and the reply they get is, past records show our equipment's working all right, back in contact with you in 14 days. Well, when water's coming over the path onto the, into the entrance, coming back in 14 days really ain't good enough. But what I wanted to ask Mr. Butcher about was, previously you said that the cars that parked in the street will be towed away if they're not removed. Can you legally do that? Because we're not on about, where I live, residents, we're on about students who park the car and say, see you in 3 months' time, and they walk off. So can you actually legally remove a car that's taxed insurance that someone's just left on the roadside? I have asked for yellow lines, but I got declined. So over to you.
Thank you for that. So when I say remove, we don't remove the vehicle itself, we can move it aside and then we will put it back to its original position as part of work. So we did that when we did traffic regulation order works in Sinsel Bank area. So rather than not being able to do the lines, we were able to bring a company in and do that as part of our works coordinated. It's our last resort because we don't want to be doing that. We'd rather people abide by what we're asking to do so we can do the cleansing or do the works. But yes, there is the option for us to do that as part of our works.
Thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion on this item. I propose that we have reviewed and are satisfied with the detailed performance contained in the report and that officers be thanked for their presentation. Can you please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. That is agreed. Moving on, item 9, Highways and Transport Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. This item is on pages 35 to 40 of the agenda pack. This item enables the committee to comment on the content of its work programme. The report will be presented by Hannah Colclough, Scrutiny Officer. Hannah.
Thank you, Chair. So next committee meeting will be on the 8th of June. We have 3 items scheduled: the Winter Service Plan 2026, the Netlham Road Roundabout Scheme and the Highways Performance Report 3-year statutory update following the Year 6 update in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite members of the committee to speak on the item. Councillor Wimhurst. Councillor Vernon, thank you.
Me again, surprise, surprise, sorry. So I've taken on board the points that we made at the last forward plan when I complained about the lack of items for consideration on the agenda. So I have some suggestions for things that I would like to bring to this scrutiny panel in the future. So I would like to see the Streets Works Charter coming back to monitor its effectiveness and whether it is actually having an impact on the contractors that work within Lincolnshire. I'd also like to consider, with the Chairman's permission of course, whether we may be able to look at digital infrastructure along the highway, also sort of bearing in mind what Councillor Sneath said, and look at how that's impacting on different ways of working across Lincolnshire and how it can benefit more rural communities too. And the third area that I'd like to submit for consideration would be a paper showing total highways work and spend per division locally. I think this would identify any areas of inequality across the county and would actually be quite useful to see. Thank you.
Councillor Sheard.
Yeah, I totally agree with that last point that you made, Councillor Vernon. I'd like to see that as well.
And thank you for your suggestions. It's very much welcomed. It's not always down to the officers, I think, to come up with these ideas. It's balls in our court a bit as well. So if there's no more questions, thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. I move that we approve the planned programme for 2026, subject to the consideration of the suggestions. Can you please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. That is agreed. That now concludes the business of the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance today. Should we take a 15-minute break and then come back for the discussion afterwards?